Go. Awesome. Hey, everyone. Thank you for coming along tonight on this chilly, if you're in Melbourne, it's a chilly winter's night, and we've got some sunshine for you here on the other end of this Zoom call, so that's exciting. But just before we start, I do want to do an acknowledgement of country. So wherever we all are today, in the spirit of reconciliation, that we acknowledge the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community, and we pay our respects to elders past and present, extend those respects to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people today. Sophie Rowell, you are my string wag guest today. You're my sixth ever guest, and I am so excited to have you here. I have been a fangirl for a very long time.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me.
So I was really excited. We got to work together. I think the very first time was 2021. We were just out of COVID. You were leading MSO strings, and I was jumping around in front of you doing body percussion to Vivaldi's Four Seasons.
That's right. It was fun.
And a school show that was meant to be in Hamer Hall, but then it ended up being on Zoom. So we didn't know if anyone was jumping along with me.
No, but you did it really enthusiastically, and I'm sure everybody was jumping at home.
I was jumping with nerves. I hadn't seen that many people in a room for so long.
Yeah.
But since then, I reckon I've managed to ruin heaps of symphonies for you, turning them into songs and other activities. I am sorry about that.
Yes, you do owe me a few tunes to take back, I reckon.
I like singing along to Beethoven. You're a violin player, a very good violin player, an excellent violinist, we could probably say. How did you start? Let's talk about how you became a violin player. Who put that violin in your hand?
Well, I was lucky, I think, being the third of four children with two older brothers, that mum had already put them learning lots of instruments. They liked it, but and they both did piano, and then one of my other brothers, he just sort of tried every instrument because he'd give up one and then mum would bring another one home. And so when I was 3.5, 4, he was playing the viola. And from there, that sparked my interest in that sort of string sound. And I asked to play the violin, and mum said, wait till you go to school. So I started violin and school at the same time.
There you go. And so violin, just because that was like age appropriate, or you just wanted that instrument?
I wanted the violin and know nothing else. And I was kind of, I don't know, I've only been told all of this, but I remember I was a very shy child, and they spent the first 5 years under my mum's skirt. And then they found out about this thing, the Suzuki method, where it wasn't so much about learning the violin, it was about, the whole person and it as a language, and that sort of appealed to mum and dad. So they sent me to that, and which was great, it was my community. And then apparently a few months in, dad asked mum if they could put me back in my box a bit. So
You excelled too much.
it worked very well to bring me out of my shell.
That's so great. Yeah, and little. So you were young and you were able to do that at that time. That's exactly Suzuki's exactly the right method for that age.
And for parents, I think, who didn't have any idea of how to play a violin, or they didn't learn music themselves. So that helped them too, I think.
If they didn't learn themselves, did they just innately know it was important, or did they wish that they had learned music? Or how were they so driven to support you?
I think my mum is very musical. My dad couldn't sing a note in tune. Like, it was so embarrassing every time he opened his mouth. But my mum, like, she encouraged us, she encouraged him as well, to our chagrin. But bless. But mum is very musical, but she grew up on the land without much money, so there was no chance for her to learn a musical instrument, unfortunately. So she, I think, would have been very good.
Yeah, and one of those things where, like, you missed out, so I want to do this for my children and make sure that they don't miss out. Yeah, make the next generation flourish. Amazing. We'll talk about all the different work that you have done and are currently doing. But do you have, like, in a week, do you have like what's a typical week look like? Is there no typical week?
No, I do not have a typical week. I have, this year I'm getting better. I have a couple of set things that I try to do my MCO work, I try to go into the office on Tuesdays to make sure that we're all together there as a team. And when it's uni time, I try and do my Melbourne uni teaching on a Wednesday. But around that, literally, I have nothing is set and nothing. It's just, it can be rehearsing all week, or it can be practicing and admin, and it's a combination, and one that I have to keep on top of, because I just don't know unless I really keep a very colourful diary on what thing is what, that so that I'm on top of everything.
Do you like that though? Do you like the lack of routine?
I think it suits me.
Yeah, I think it suits me too. I like it. It's like, every week there isn't, like, I sort of know, I teach largely on Thursdays, but not every Thursday, just some. Largely after school on a Wednesday, but not every Wednesday. So yeah, I quite like that. When you were growing up, did you, like with mum who loved her music, were you able to go to lots of concerts? Did you see lots of performances?
Yes, I was really lucky. They loved going to concerts, and so I remember seeing a lot of Music of Viva concerts. Not so many symphony concerts. Mum and Dad didn't like the symphony very much, but they loved opera. So I remember seeing Stuart Challenger conduct Tristan and Isolde when I was 8 years old. But my sister and I were so bored that we only looked forward to the picnic baskets, because there were 2 breaks, so we got 2 picnics. So I mean, I look back and I was so lucky. Music, and also they loved going out to restaurants. So my whole life I've been going to concerts and going out to restaurants.
And you're an Adelaide girl, and like I on purpose chose to holiday in Adelaide over summer last year, which I wouldn't have done 20 years ago. But Adelaide is restaurant capital. I love it so much.
Yeah, it's always been good for food, and got the right climate for everything. But and an amazing mixed heritage that celebrates produce that's from the area. So yeah,
Awesome.
lucky.
You learnt from Alice Watton, and I know lots of her students have actually string wagged. I didn't realize how many of people I know that were her students. But she must have left an enormous legacy with you. What was it like learning from Alice? And then maybe you can talk about what it was like then working as a teaching assistant in her studio.
Yes. Well, first of all, before I learned from Alice, I was lucky in Adelaide to learn from Beryl Kimber. So I already had an amazing teacher who really taught me how to perform and taught me how to be strong on the stage, and to that way that music must be conveyed. So I came with this, I knew that I wanted to be a violinist, and I knew sort of what I was good at, but I knew I had these technical problems. And I saw a lot of good violinists coming out of the AYO program, which I was part of, and therefore got in touch with Alice and said, look, can I please learn from you? And I think what she was, her legacy is, and what she was particularly good at, is taking each individual and working out, one, how the violin looked with their physicality, and secondly, who they were as a musician and how she could enhance that. So for me, having come with that grounding already of being quite a strong person, I could really withstand whatever she threw at me. And sometimes it wasn't always easy being a student of hers, but I guess some teachers have bad days, and also she was trying to make me stronger at times. But the way that she physically made the violin much easier for me, and more made everything I could already do, she just made it much easier and faster and more secure. I think I'm forever grateful for. And then being her assistant, seeing all of that as she was setting up mostly older people, either just starting their degrees, or some even having finished their degrees coming to her. So at the ages of 21 or 22, trying to reset your technique is tough. And that's where I was brought on board to help do that sort of resetting and aid there. So learning that the physicality of playing the violin through other people was vital, I think, for help me as a violinist and me as a teacher.
Yeah, and you really, by teaching, you really reinforce, you get to do extra practice in those basics too, don't you? You're just reinforcing it all day long.
Yes, I mean, it's pretty bad. I saw a video of myself playing, and I'm always saying to people, no extra movement, no extra movement. And there I was doing an extra movement on every single down to up bow. So I needed to take a bit of my own medicine.
I think we all do. And what we think we do and what we do, the video reveals all.
It does actually. But I'm still thankful for her too, for letting me be me. And I was never drawn to getting a job immediately in any sort of a job. I just wanted to, maybe it's that freelance style in me still, just to find my love of chamber music, and she made that possible. And she made it possible by letting me earn money through teaching. So that was really good, rather than having to play in an orchestra.
So individual style. So you, up until, we'll talk about your job at ANAM, but you last year and maybe the year before, you were acting head of violin at ANAM when
Yes,
Robert.
just last year.
Oh, just last year. Okay. The years are blending in these days, Sophie. I can't. Acting head of violin while Robin left and before Adam has now come on board, although he was appointed but hadn't started about halfway through the year, I think.
Yes. Yeah.
Whatever. Details. How do you, like, I'm so interested because I love all the violinists at Anam. I think that they're all adorable. And I love the individual styles. And I love that that is part of making music. As a person, you have your own voice and you have your own style. How do you work with that? Especially like if the style isn't your style or it's conflicts with your I don't know. Do they conflict? I don't know. How do you work on that with somebody at that such a high level? What do you do?
Yeah, it's a good question. You're right. I really try to look after the individual and see also beyond the walls of ANAM. I think it's different. If I'm teaching a teenager, then my outlook's different. But by the time I get to ANAM, I'm their outlook to the rest of the world and where they might go. And if somebody comes in with a distinctly unique voice and says to me, now I want to get a job in a section of a symphony orchestra, then for that you need to sort of rein them in a little bit, because you think you can't get up there and play like Ravi Lakatosh and expect to get past the first round. So getting that, working out who they are as a person and as a musician is really important, I think, and then finding their voice that suits also what they're hoping to achieve.
Let's just assume that I wouldn't get a job in the Melbourne Symphony Orchestra or any symphony orchestra. How hard is it to toggle on and off from solo mode to section mode?
Some people do it more easily than others. It's funny because in the chamber orchestra, I have to remind myself I actually have to go into section mode, because you don't want yourself sticking out all the time. I don't, in the symphony, yeah, a little bit, but it's more noise around me. But certainly chamber orchestra, I have to remind myself from time to time to rein it in and not go full power. I was just thinking though of one boy that I was teaching from ANAM last year, and he came in and he had something to say, but he didn't know how to say it. So then as a teacher, you just know that there's something there, but they don't know how to do it themselves. So that's where it's wonderful to be able to not demonstrate their sound, but show them the different bow speeds and the capabilities and the way you might think about doing something. And it's often in the way they lift the bow rather than put the bow on the string. So just little things I'm fascinated by.
Yeah, I love that. And because I mean they're young still, like they're still in their early 20s, and some of them are teenagers still, who are quite advanced, but their brains are still growing, their personality is still growing, they still haven't had full life experience to put all of that into their playing.
And also a lot of them come from out of state, and it's their first move away from home. So with a lot of them, you're not. I'm never their mother, but you do look at them and make sure that they're doing all right. And I'm never. I'm a bit like Alice. I'm never their mum, absolutely not. And I'm not. I'm their friend once they leave, and I'm really like, okay, there's this boundary. More with my violin students than chamber music. I'm much more personable there, but I think I'm really supportive of them as a person too, and they know that.
Yeah. Tell us about your actual ANAM job then.
Well, I'm still teaching 2.5. I'm sharing one student. I've got two really
Oh, I
amazing
didn't know
ones
you were
there.
still doing violin. Okay, that's so
Yeah,
great. Yeah.
just a little bit. So I'm really lucky there. But I'm also the head of string chamber music, which is just the best job because chamber music's the fun part that they all love doing. And I make it less fun when I'm a bit strict and say that they have to be as good, but they love it. And just last week we had a huge showcase, and the string quartets all played, and they were just fabulous. So I was proud as punch.
Has Anna made a shift away from orchestra more into chamber music in the last 3 or 4 years? Has that been something that's been a conscious decision?
I've been at NM now for, since 2015 when I moved to Melbourne.
Mm.
And when I arrived, it was the last year of Paul Dean being the director. And then Nick Deutsch took over for a number of years, and now Pavli Umpanen. And having been there through these three artistic directors, I notice, and you probably do too, how much the outlook and the focus changes
Yeah.
from artistic director to artistic director. So Paul's bent was really doing amazing concerts with modern music, and it was fabulous. And then Nick came in and decided, right, we're going to build up the orchestral program, and now Pavli's come in. And you're right, he said, let's really focus in on the chamber music, which I have to say, on behalf of the string department, I think it's amazing. I'm not sure brass department as in love with that sort of a focus, but still, I think chamber music teaches everybody how to be a better musician, and it teaches you everything you need to know, especially in the strings, about how to play your instrument and play with others.
Mm. I was doing some work with one of the students today, and we were chatting about this just a bit before, on the Stravinsky Octet for Winds. And I'd heard it before, but I hadn't really looked. I have heard the piece, but didn't know the piece. And it was really interesting doing a bit of background research on it about Stravinsky choosing to not use strings because they were too warm and too resonant, and writing this very cold but very whimsical octet. And I thought, what a great opportunity for the non-stringies to actually have a real play in that.
Yeah.
It's for a school show too. It's great.
Yes, there's some amazing wind pieces that have been written, but exactly what you say, well, wind, I guess brass can, but wind, they can't harmonize like strings. So you're looking for something more vertical if you look to the other instruments.
Yeah, and strings are just they have this. I mean, you have to be a homogenous player in an orchestra, so you learn that skill. But I suppose a flute player, you're one of two, maybe three, um, and it's such a different mindset, I suppose.
And they're single line instruments. They can never play a double stop, so they don't ever understand. I mean, even in our own playing, we can play a double stop and harmonize our intonation and the voicing of the chords and everything like that. It's something that unfortunately wind players never get to do.
Interesting.
Mm.
I didn't know this till fairly recently, but you were an ASQ, or you were the lead violin of ASQ, but not for a long time now.
Yes, well, that came about actually at the end of the Anam days was when we started the Tank Stream Quartet.
Mm.
And Tank String Quartet did quite well. We were very lucky, but we worked hard. And we went and studied in Germany with the Alpenberg Quartet. We did quite a lot of European study there. And while we were there, we got rung by the ASQ, and they said, "Would you like to move to Adelaide and be the next Australian string quartet?" And we actually thought it was a joke because we were penniless in Berlin. I remember us sitting there and we can afford 2 drinks now at Potsdamer Platz. Like, it was just surreal, but really amazing to be able to have the coveted string quartet job in the country. So it was an amazing period of my life. So I think with Tank Stream we started in 2000, and then I left ASQ, started ASQ 2006, so, and left at the end of 2011. So for
Oh,
12 years I was chiefly a string quartet player.
yeah, right. But I suppose Yeah, well, for me, it was a time when I wasn't really even in the world of orchestra, and I sort of came. I was like to say come back, but I don't know that I ever really was in the world of orchestra. But you, as concert master of the Melbourne Symphony, is where I first came across you. Who is this fabulous person that makes everything look very easy?
Uh,
Yeah, talk about that. Well, like concert master, that's the coveted job.
well, when I loved string quartets, and to be honest, they're still my favourite
Mm,
form of music, which is why I like my ANAM job a lot.
yeah.
But I felt like I was getting pigeonholed as a string quartet player, and I wanted to explore different avenues of music. So I didn't set out to become a concert master. I probably knew that I was okay in a leadership position, but I played a lot with the Mahler Chamber Orchestra in the section, which was amazing. And then I got a job actually with the Scottish Chamber Orchestra leading the second violins. But then the job as associate concertmaster came up in Melbourne, and I went for that because I thought maybe it's time to come home,
Okay.
closer to Adelaide, where my family is, and just be there. And from being associate concertmaster, then I got a promotion to being concertmaster a few years later. And so that all said and done, it fell into my lap. It wasn't something I searched for.
There you go. And I learnt while there were positions not filled, the concert master's job is also to be head of all the other positions that aren't filled. So you were telling me you were head of trombone.
Yes. Yeah, you're head of panel for everything,
Yeah.
and you are basically the one who really looks to answer first. But yes, so what you lead the panels in the first violin auditions, but because we didn't have a principal trombone at the time, or a principal double bass at one other time, or a principal horn, or even principal percussion, I think I was for a while. So all those titles were mine, nominally, of course, but it meant I had got to look. I loved it. It was a lot of work, and it was a lot of talking with people, players and management, and both. But I got to know an awful lot about a lot of people, and about a lot of instruments, and a lot of the psyche behind them. And I'm while it was sometimes a bit ugly in the meetings, as happens, when everybody's a bit fired up, and it's understandable. I still I don't regret having being a major part of all of that, because it really was fascinating to be there.
I think you appear so calm, and you'd be a good person in the room when things get fiery.
Oh, yeah, it probably is my. I remember once. I know that I'm a calm person. On the outside, underneath, honestly, my blood pressure's like a million over 1,000. But underneath, it's not, because I remember once we were driving, and the violist in my quartet, we were driving home, and she wanted to borrow my car, and she's a hopeless driver. She's the first one to say that. So I said, right, come on, Sal, you better drive the car, and we'll just so that you practice driving again before tomorrow when you take the car out. So she did, and I turned around to speak to Anne in the back seat. And I, having said, Sal, Anne just lives over there. I turned back, and we were actually on the other side of the road, because I'd said she lives over there, and there was a bus coming towards us. And I said, oh, look, Sally, there's a bus. And she went, oh, yes. And was like, but that sort of calm thing, of course, inside I was petrified, but it just comes out calm.
I'm the opposite, but that probably comes as no surprise. You left MSO, and I feel like I'm doing a bit of a "this is your life." I love it, because you're a great person. I mean, literally, my brilliant career is you. You left MSO to take the artistic director of the Melbourne Chamber Orchestra, which I think, is that 2 years in now, 3 years in?
This is my second year.
Second year,
But
okay.
it's my yeah, so but I did program last season, so I was sort of in my last year of MSO doing a bit of both. I didn't want to leave MSO. I felt like I still had more to do there, but this job came up, and I couldn't resist the idea of moving into a more creative role. Whereas at MSO, it definitely was much more it was governed by what other people had programmed. I didn't get any chance for that creativity. So now being in a curatorial role, it's amazing stretch and a challenge, but one that I absolutely love.
I mean, you know, there's people employed in the choosing the repertoire role in the MSO, and I don't even know that that trickles down to the musicians particularly. But with MCO, it's you really. That's just such a great, and you come up with these wonderful titles and programs for the concerts. I just love reading them, and yeah, it's great. And you're loving the job, and you're doing heaps of new stuff as well.
Yeah, I think that's important, and it also shows how my brain works, that I don't want to do one thing at once. I guess it's even in my programs, but I do think, you know, at MSO, I will say that there were a few opportunities for musicians to be curating and creating programs, and I deliberately didn't do that because I was given so many other opportunities there. I felt like it wasn't a concert master's job to take up the few spaces that there were. So I deliberately stepped away, but now I'm doing it myself. I love it. And to try and find for me that balance for everybody, and which is me personally, intellectually, but also for the musicians on stage and for the audiences, but also importantly, as you say, with the new music, just being open and reflecting on who we are today as a society.
I popped into a rehearsal on, was it last Friday? No, 2 Fridays.
2 Fridays ago.
And there was a quintet. You were leading the quintet, and you're all sight reading. That didn't sound like you were sight reading, but you're all sight reading. Are you able to talk about what that was that I came and heard? Yeah.
Yes, because we're taking it on around Victoria. So yeah, that's a really special project that MCO's put together, and it's with Yorta Yorta woman Alara Briggs Patterson, who is just a spellbinding singer-songwriter and also double bass player. Really, I mean, you were there. Something about her voice is so mesmerizing, and she's got something very important to say. And through Emma Sullivan, who is a bass player, they've known each other through Emma's Women in Bass days. So that's where the connection started. And then we just were hoping, and we've, I think, done it quite nicely, because Alara hasn't really written for strings before. She just does her own thing, and then people create sounds around her. So I'm really glad that we've got Erky Veldheim working with her and with us. So he's this conduit who just is the most amazing empath, and seems to read their souls and be able to put the music that Alara says or sings or talks about, and he can realize it and realize the most amazing sound world to complement hers.
Yeah, and her music, I mean, it tends to lean a bit more groove based, but you've still got these incredible weaving lines that go through the parts, and he's arranged them and largely composed things as well. It was magic. It was very, very magical, and I loved that you all had to improvise in there. How did that? How does that? Has that been part of your experience as a player?
No, I'm so uptight. I hate it. But, you know, you've got to, because I think, oh, am I doing it right? Whereas there is no right and there's no wrong, and you just let it go. So when we're all in it, they're doing it together, I don't really mind. And that was quite easy for me because it was sounds.
Yeah.
If it's soundscaped, I'm really happy. If it's like on B flat minor 9 or whatever, I'm absolutely petrified and I can't do anything but play B flats.
Should there be more emphasis on that as part of the canon of learning violin? Should that be something that or strings say, should that be something that we do more of, or is there already enough to learn?
I think there is a place for it. I think ANAM would be a good place for it. And sometimes people come along, but it's not I mean, there's only so many things you can fit in. So do you do Alexander technique or do you do improvisation? So I'm not going to be the one to make those decisions. I know which one I'd go for, but I'm not in the health and wellbeing program. So I'm just going to have a glass of wine instead.
Have your glass of wine. Yes, I hope, and cheers to everybody that did bring a glass of wine, and those who didn't, of course. I love. I don't consider myself like an improviser per se, but I do improvise, I suppose, a lot when I play, but not perhaps over, you know, a bebop progression or something, but I do make up music a lot. And I suppose that's part of when you write music, you have to make up music. So it's a process, part of a process of being playful on your instrument. And both my sisters are artists, they're visual artists, and I was always really, really jealous that their creativity was so obvious and my creativity was Kreutzer studies in the next room. You know, that was like my art. And I felt like there was this missing piece to this idea that music is full of self-expression, and it's like, where's my expression? I'm not allowed to express. I always do things wrong. I play the wrong dynamics, I do the wrong bow, I do the wrong foot, whatever it is. So I don't know. I think there is a playfulness, and learning about Suzuki when I was doing my master's and I was doing this analysis of pedagogies, and part of the Suzuki philosophy is that intuition is developing intuition, and improvising is that as well, isn't it? It's like it's just being able to know what comes next.
Yeah. And I think also be flexible, and flexibility is a great thing to have. Where I struggle a little bit is the way I teach is, as you say, to find that individual voice, but always at the service of the composer. And that's where improvisation doesn't fit that mold unless it's written in.
And the cadenza, I suppose the history of cadenzas, and I mean, like your Baroque harpsichordists will improvise because that's part of their training to read those the figured bass, but our improvisation, I suppose, extends as much as Baroque, like ornaments and coloring what's already been there. But cadenzas, I mean, would that be a fun thing to do, to write a cadenza to a concerto?
Yeah, it is. And that's one thing that they used to have at NM, which they don't have anymore. They all had to write a cadenza for their Mozart or Haydn concerto, whatever. So yeah, I think that's a brilliant idea. And that improvisation, I know one of the kids at NM played and is now in the Emerging Artists of ACO this year. And I wasn't there at the audition and I haven't spoken to them about it, but I know that they played the most amazing ornamentation that you've never heard, just once, like just at the very end. And I was like, you absolutely have to do that in your audition, because it made everybody in the room smile. And I'm sure that is the reason they are an Emerging Artist this year. It's just that tiny bit of character that turns everybody's ears, and you think, yes, that's brilliant. I'm all for that.
I love that. Speaking of cadenzas, we then have to speak about concertos, and we have somebody who's listening now who saw you recently play Beethoven's violin concerto. I love that piece so much. Do you just love that piece so much?
Yes, it's my favorite.
Is it? Yeah.
It's I think it's the best violin concerto that there is. And I, having revisited it again lately, I hadn't played it for 26 years since I studied it. It was the piece that really turned me into being a serious violinist when Alice gave me that. So that kind of changed my life from wanting to be sort of good, but now that piece gave me a determination, and I had that again when I was practicing it recently, because it's just takes you beyond music. It's just seamless, and it is 40 minutes long, but it's worth. It doesn't feel like if you play the Brahms concerto, it's an exhausting process, I find, and the Tchaikovsky, but the Beethoven it's like a ribbon that just flows, and you just get to follow it.
Amazing. I'm going to see, because I'm coming on tour with you later on this year, so I'm going to get to see you do it like for 3, maybe 4 nights in a row.
Yes,
I'm
I
really
can't wait.
excited by
No,
that.
I haven't played it for 26 years, and then suddenly two lots of people asked me to play it this year. So yeah,
I think that's really good. Oh, I forgot to mention to everybody listening, by the way, that if you've got any questions for Sophie, please feel free to pop them in the chat, and we'll make sure that she answers them for you, or you can, you know, pop your hand up or something. Just let me know if you've got questions for Sophie, because there's a like a font of knowledge right here, and I don't even know how to begin to extract it all from you. It's very exciting talking to you. Let's have a look at oh, is that Adele jumping on? Have you got a question?
Yes, I do. Hello.
Do you want to pop your video on so
Hi.
we can see? There you
Oh,
are. Oh, you're
sure. I thought,
sideways.
sorry. Oh, I held on. Yay. There we are. Hi. Yeah, I did have a question. I was about to write it, but I just jumped on, so I'm sort of in the midst of putting kids to sleep and all that sort of stuff. But anyway, I had a question about romantic concertos for orchestral editions, because I was wondering, is like Brook concerto considered to be an okay choice for an orchestral edition?
it's a good question, because I mean, anything's okay as long as you play it well enough. Uh,
Yeah.
we don't often hear Brook concerto in an audition, I must confess. I think maybe it's like the Mendelssohn concerto, that it's so open in the first page that you need to be really beautifully perfect in everything. So people tend to shy a little bit away from it. But I think anything played well is an absolutely valid choice, and a beautiful Brook concerto would be a real pleasure to hear.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm
Get
starting.
practicing.
So, yeah, no, it's just interesting. I also feel like I also wondered another question as well. Like, so I'm somebody who has just moved back to Australia recently, and having, you know, had young kids and everything. Like, it does seem like age is an issue, but would it be a problem to take an audition, like, if you're already in your, like, 40s? Like, I don't know, it's weird, but, like, I guess you're going against, like, a lot of young people, but, does that count against you?
I have two things to say to that. One is, I think we all should run our own race, and that it's not
Yeah.
about the other people. Yeah, an audition, you are up against other people, but if you're fighting yourself, then that's not good. So I think you're you, and that's it. And everybody's on their own path. And secondly, in auditions, certainly with the Melbourne Symphony, the screens never come up, so we have no idea. I should say, I sound like I'm still there, but we don't have any idea who's there. So, and age is not a factor. So I would hope that our society is just beyond that, and I think we are, actually, to be honest. And if it's all about the person, unfortunately, it is a competition. It's about the person who the panel thinks plays best on the day. But if all those people deliver their best, then I think they can be happy.
Cool. Thanks.
There was a conversation on Facebook a lot recently about the screens, Sophie, and lots of conflicting opinions about the value of those screens.
I like them, I must say, but I like them that MSO has them up all rounds. I think sometimes it can sway an audition one way or another if people are revealed. But that's just me.
So I've not done an audition. I'll just make that really clear in case anybody missed that at any point in this chat. I like the idea of that, and I think that Melbourne was one of the first orchestras to use the screen, I believe, and what happened is that gender started to become more equally represented when the screen was up. So that was, to me, proof that the screen does work. Then you get a trial period, right? So everybody's still safe. You're a great player. You sound great for the orchestra. Can you get along with your section? There's a trial period. So I can't personally see the harm in it, but there was lots of differing opinions about that screen, and I remember one comment saying, if those that benefited from the screens will continue to want it, but we all need to be ourselves. But I feel like I like the idea of the screen.
I do, and I would, if as a compromise, I would say maybe bring it down for a final round. But
Yeah.
then again, if a screen came down and I saw one person versus the other, I think I'd be biased if I knew one and didn't know the other. So I don't know.
I
I
think that
screens are
we
safer.
are, yeah, that's human nature, isn't it? That we have unconscious bias anyway. Of course,
Yes.
we want to work with our friends.
Yeah,
Of course we do.
exactly. Yeah,
Or somebody, you know, annoyed you 35 years ago and you don't want to work with them.
exactly. You don't get over
You don't get over it. You've talked about that you were strong, that you've been strong and as a player, and you certainly are, and you're a really calm, you know, person on the outside, we've just learned. But earlier you were telling me that when you did a masterclass for Yehudi Menuhin as a little person, you were very, very, very nervous. You were terrified.
Yes, but
Rightly so.
you don't see it. And it didn't come across in my playing, luckily. But yes, I've been so afraid twice in my life, so nervous that I don't remember a thing about the performance, and that was definitely one of them.
Mhm.
But the ABC followed us around all day. So I think it was in the beginning days of National Academy, actually, when they didn't quite have a base yet, and it was something organised through them, and it was at the Melbourne Town Hall. And it was packed, and he sat on the stage, and I played the Bach Chaconne, which is a crazy thing to play for somebody like that, but I was pleased that I did it, and amazing that the ABC were there so I could watch it back a couple of months later and then remember everything he said through that, thank goodness.
So nerves wasn't something that you had to deal with a lot. I mean, obviously playing for him, of course, that's a different level. But did you get that performance anxiety?
Yes, I'm nervous, terribly nervous, especially beforehand, and I'm nervous when I'm out there. But I'm lucky somehow. Some people it really affects their playing. Me, it doesn't affect my playing. Whether that's because I've done enough, if I've done enough practice. So if I'm secure in my hand, then I have a security in my playing, which therefore doesn't get too affected by nerves. Of course, there's a little bit. But I see some people just lose the ability, their brain doesn't, the fingers no longer function. I'm terribly lucky that I don't have that sort of nervous impact on my playing.
Yeah. Do any of your students, do you have to really spend time with them to, like, if that's not a hurdle that you ever really had to deal with, is that something that's harder for you to work with your own students?
Yes, but I'm happy to do that, and I'm happy to find other ways and to work on ways that we can increase their comfort in performance, even if they're never as good as other people. But I think through experience comes that comfort level. And I was lucky before that I played that chaconne. I had played it so often in classes at the Institute of Music where I was studying with Alice. And I think that's the key, that the warm-up performances, I don't need them as much anymore. I mean, of course it's helpful, but that having already done that, you've got that security there. So that part of study, I think is the most valuable thing that you can have, actually, performance practice.
Yeah, it's something that teachers, like as a teacher in a school, I don't teach strings in school as much as I have it in the past, but we need to make sure that happens so regularly, because we can't expect our students to do their VCA recital or their 8th grade or whatever it is that they're doing on two run throughs, or maybe one run through in public.
And I will say, yeah, I totally agree. And I even had a student the other night who played a recital, and part of a soiree, so just one piece, and they only had they had one run through with the pianist, and my student was fine, but the pianist, I mean, they had how many people to play for that night, so they weren't quite in the same tempo zone, and that's really hard for the little student too. So actually, it's not only the performances, but it's that getting used to whatever else is going on in the piece as well. I think it's worth practicing.
And practicing for things that aren't in your control, like the accompanist and you aren't working well together, but you can't stop. You've got to go with it.
Yeah.
And learning about that too. It's pretty big. It's a lot we take in, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. And the more and more you can do that, not to ever not get nervous, because I wouldn't want anybody to not be nervous. I think there is something about that excitement, and you can call it nervous if you like, that excitement of a concert, which you can't replicate in any form of rehearsal.
Yeah, that adrenaline, that we are live, that moment, that capturing that moment. Whereas the nervousness about I haven't done enough work and I'm about to present this in public is a different nerves.
Exactly. And then that's not something the teacher can control.
That's right.
That's your own fault, folks. As I've found out before when I've been caught short.
I mean, we've all under rehearsed for things and walked off and going, I don't think I'm going to make a habit of doing that.
Yeah, exactly.
What we're sort of coming somewhat to an end-ish. What projects are making you excited this year?
Well, I mean, that Alara one we talked about, very excited about.
Yeah.
I think MCO is doing really good things at the moment. I'm excited because my brain is also in programming next year.
Oh.
So I know what's coming up already. We launch at the end of August. But before that, we're working with Tippy, principal cello in the ACO, and he's coming to guest direct our MCO, which is brilliant in the middle of July. But I'm also this year doing quite a bit of chamber music with Ensemble Q, and my students are doing great things. One's currently auditioning in Austria to try and move over there, and then he's coming back to do his recital next week. And so I've got, what I love about my career, and I think I'm very lucky, is I've got things happening at all different levels. There's my level, there's MCO things, there's the uni level, there's students at school, there's you name it. I've got people, like I've even got mid-20s coming in, and we're just looking at their technique to try and make it more solid. And sometimes when you get somebody playing, I find I get somebody playing Kreutzer 2 with a really beautiful open sound. That to me is a bigger achievement than me playing the Beethoven concerto, because, you know, I know what I'm doing there, but that's great and that's new. So I'm excited by the possibilities for everything, not so much myself. I'm just practicing like normal.
Day in the life. I found your bio online, and it's sort of weird stalking people I know. I often like to do homework on people I don't know. I feel like I sort of knew enough a bit. But in the final line of your bio, it says, although Sophie loves music, she can always be tempted to exchange her violin for a pack of cards in one hand and a glass of wine in the other. Can you explain that further?
The love of wine or the love of cards?
I want to know, what card games, what are you drinking, what goes on with the cards, what goes on with the wine?
That is another family trait of ours. We don't we absolutely, the 3 out of the 4, my younger sister, she's not as involved, but yeah, she can play and she's competitive. When we just play cards all night when we're together with mum and my 2 brothers, and my dad used to do the dishes. It was perfect. We play canasta, we play 500, we play oh heck, or whatever rude word we call it. What we just love is being around the table together. It's very much us just being ourselves, and the fridge is very nearby and the wine flows, and it's just the nights turn into the early mornings and we're still competitively not letting somebody win 500, so the game will drag on till the next day, and then look, it's tragic. And when I was little, I must confess, I'm not at all competitive on the violin, and I never have been. I've just always played and appreciated everybody else around me. But I'm terrible with cards and games. And when I used to lose, I used to cry. And I'm very determined, so that I would be determined to win. So the family would play until I lost to teach me how to lose.
Is that a family dynamic? Like if you were playing cards with your friends, would you be equally as competitive?
Well, the problem is because I've played so many cards, my family
can't play with your friends.
Like, well, Can, but it's like, oh, Sophie won again. So
You should have secretly love, right?
yeah, so I have to sort of dial it down, and then I think, no, I can't. Oh, and then I think, okay, it's all right. And then I actually get relieved when I lose with my friends because I think, yes, great.
Okay.
Now they can
Keep
feel
it fair,
good.
keep it nice.
Yes.
When we were on tour last year, we were out in Portland, I think it was, and we all went out for a drink after a concert that I watched. And you rock up in this big leather jacket, explain your disdain for craft beer, and then order a pint of Carlton. And that was very unexpected, I will say that.
Yeah, I'm not very fancy. I like fine things in life, but not fancy.
Yeah, but not beer, not fancy beer. Oh, so I judged you, I will admit.
There's too many craft beers. I can't be bothered starting with them, so I'll just stick with the ones I know.
As we wrap up, I'm going to do 5 questions that I always ask my guests. I think you've already answered the first one, but do you have a favorite piece of music?
Tough. I hate being asked this one.
Yeah.
Often say probably Beethoven Opus 131 string quartet.
Okay. Beethoven features a lot in people's favorites, and he is your favorite violin concerto. This is a side question. Like, Beethoven 9 came in as #1 of the top 100 feel good on the ABC FM last weekend, and there was outrage about that again on social media, as surely we can move past Beethoven. But I was secretly delighted it came in at #1, because if I voted, but I didn't, but if I did, I would have put that #1.
I wouldn't have put that #1, but I know listening to Beethoven is joyful, and the way that, yeah. I mean, I think Beethoven's amazing, but my favorite composer is Schubert. So
Oh, interesting.
yeah.
You're practicing Schubert this week.
Yes, I am. It's very tricky, the fantasy, and I'm doing a sonatina as well. So yeah, I do love, I don't know why Schubert wrote such hard things, but I mean, those songs are amazing.
Yeah.
Beethoven 9, I guess that people are talking about the last movement because the first 3 movements are a bit of a snore. So
I mean, I think that last movement, for me, I mean, I have a very different relationship with that piece, I suppose, because the very, very first thing I ever did with MSO was that 4th movement, running an Auslan choir, so like a sign language choir to the 4th. And we're about to do it again coming up. But in terms of just every single emotion of the human experience is in that movement. And for me, feel good doesn't necessarily mean happy. So it makes me feel more. I think it's like I feel more sometimes on the melancholy than I do with the happy as well. But it's all in there.
I mean, one of the pieces that gets me more than anything, not feel good, but feel, is the Lacrimosa from the Mozart Requiem, which he only wrote the first 8 bars for, but oh, it kills me when I hear it. So
yeah, that's an interesting thing about emotions and music. All right, moving on. Do you have a favorite city? Where's home? Where's your home? Melbourne's your home now.
Melbourne's home. Favorite city, Paris or New York.
Mm.
But home for me is always going to be the Adelaide Hills, where I was born. There's smell, that everything. Even though I never need to live there again, that's where my heart is.
Very nice there. Okay, so Paris or New York, both hustle bustle, culturally fabulous, and great food.
Yeah.
Again, okay.
I wouldn't never want to live in either, because then the sheen would go.
Yeah. The mystery and the newness, and here I am, and okay. What's the least favorite part of the work that you do?
Email.
I knew you were going to say that.
Hate them. Absolutely hate them. I bought a new computer, which I'm talking to you through, and that's the only thing that gets me through, that I get this nice computer.
We were talking about emails one time, and you go, I send an email and it's not just them, because people reply to emails. You can send another one back again. And it's like this monster, isn't it? Just keeps
exponential growth. It's awful.
You write really polite emails, though. I think you probably craft an email. You don't need to me craft them so well. You can just throw information on them in case you spend too much time on them. What's the most favorite part of the work that you do?
Oh, always I'm a musician who gets to work with other musicians, and it doesn't matter what age they are, but it's sharing the music with others that I adore. Yeah, those shared experiences,
Yeah.
especially rehearsals.
It's so personal, and it is community completely elevated, isn't it? That kind
Yeah.
of thing. Yeah.
And it's a real democracy, I think. Although I'm the leader, it is really everybody. It's a beautiful part of society, I think, when it works well. And I hope that my rehearsals work well.
In many of your ensembles, you are the leader, but I never hear you ever throw your weight around in them. Presumably, you have ideas, but allow space for others.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I really hope so, because I learn from those other ideas too. So I do come in with a very strong idea, and I'm a very strong player myself. So, but I've learned chamber music has really taught me that over the years, that as strong as I am in my opinion, people are just as strong in theirs, and they're all as valid as each other.
I've got there's a what's it called, a chat thing from Paloma, and she's like, what advice would you have for a 40-year-old Melburnian violinist determined to continue growing technically, exploring other musical venues to play at a higher level? I love performing. I'm in several groups playing other world music genres, which includes improvisation in chamber settings. I feel a disparity with the classical world. It's a bit disheartening. Any advice, life tips? Are there classical teachers who could help out? I think she's speaking from my heart there.
Oh, there are teachers that can help out. There are a lot of people that will take that time to work with people. And I actually think there's a lot of younger people. I would look actually at my just ex-ANAM students to be that sort of a teacher, because they have that empathy of still learning and what it's like, and they really understand that world. And for me, I mean, it sounds amazing, Paloma, that you're doing all those, working with as many people as you can, because that's what it is all about at the end of the day. Your practice is worth nothing if you're just doing it by yourself, I think. So, but
yeah, I'm a big fan of putting your own groups together and putting your own concerts on. And that was something that you couldn't do a while ago with classical music as readily as you could do in the folk world. But there's venues now that have their own classical music mailing list with Tempo Rubato and those places where you can literally put your own group together and put on your own concert, and it's sort of pubby without being a pub, but it's a classical music venue. It's so special.
And I've also recently been involved with the Adelaide Chamber Music School. Lockie Bramble does amazing things there, but Mount Buller also runs one every year. So that's for the older clientele, but also younger as well. And you can go there with a form group or not, and it's a way of playing chamber music together for a week. And I think that would be amazing.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions for the fabulous, amazing, gorgeous Sophie Rowell while we have her? I'm sure somebody must. And I've let myself open and I didn't have another question in the ready. So let's see if I've got any spare questions. Oh, I do have another question. So put your teacher hat on, Sophie. You collect students after we've all finished with them, right? You collect them at the high end, and many of us are in schools or teaching in our private studios, and then our students graduate through uni and they come to the likes of yourself. If you could offer teachers like one gem piece of advice to take with their teaching, what would it be? Stop doing this, or do more of this, or continue doing this, or what? I don't know.
There is one thing I would maybe say. I feel like I'm looking at my notes that I was thinking of today. Oh yeah. Feel like although you and I have this idea of quality in our heads, and we don't often impart that to a student, so that they're not always playing with a good sound. And I think if you can play with a beautiful sound, then that's better than anything else in the world. And recognizing what a good sound is. And I think that's a hard thing for a student. So I would say to a teacher to that would be my dream, that everybody would come in with a more beautiful, nurtured sound rather than striving to play higher and faster and what have you. So rather than doing a three octave scale, I would rather have a 2-octave scale perfectly in tune with such a beautiful bow control that every millimeter of bow had its place and was there and with a beautiful sound would be my thing.
Yeah, and I think there's so many factors that come with that. So the exposure to other musicians, the exposure to other people in their presumably school program. I'm teaching kids at the moment who have never heard the violin before. The only violin experience I hear is me and them, and we're just up to fingers now. We've just started fingers, but they've never heard this instrument before. Now this is a completely the opposite level of where you're teaching, but unless you know what you're striving for, it's hard to reach it.
So listening to others, listening to we've all got Spotify now. So, and I even say to my Annan kids, who have you listened to? And they come back and they just say, oh, the first one on the list. I'm like, absolutely not. Where is your curiosity for other music? And, they get quite a lecture. So they've learned to answer that question differently now. But yeah, that's that. It's hard. I mean, obviously you can't do that with somebody who's just picked up the violin for the first time. You just want them to have fun. But even at the end of the day, why can't we play an open string?
Magic.
Not just hack at it. Yeah.
At the level of the students that you're working with, they want to be violinists. So that should be, of course, like you wouldn't be a chef and not eat at other people's restaurants. You wouldn't not learn what else is out there. So it's the same thing, I presume.
Well, it's hilarious. The other day I had a group who were not ready for this Annan group, and they were playing Shostakovich, and I said, now, who have you been listening to? And they already knew they were in trouble, and then it went really pear-shaped because they said, oh, we called it the Leica Quartet because there was a dog on the front, and then somebody said the Emerson Quartet, the late Emerson. And I just sat there and looked at them, and finally one of them said, oh, maybe we should listen to the Borodin. And I said, you think? They know, but everybody knows, but we just have to dig deeper. But that's not talking about somebody who just loves the violin.
Look, music that sort of feels like the fundamental, doesn't it? That it's sound, that we are artists, sonic artists. So having that control of your sound feels completely reasonable. I've got another question here. How do you teach? I'm going to say you, emphasis, but that's my emphasis. How do you teach intonation in an ensemble setting? I've recently been focusing on this in my youngest ensembles. I think it starts from the ground up.
Oh, I totally agree. When I did MYO, I was just writing an article about this for Oster, actually. We started with 2-octave scales. Again, just 2 octaves. And but I'd get one of the sections to play a drone in the key that we were in, so that you had that really in mind. And that's what I do actually with my students as well. I sit there with the drones, and it just gradually teaches them the degrees of the scale and the perfect fourths and the perfect fifths and where the sevenths are going to go and the thirds, and gradually you build that foundation of intonation. And as a group, I think you can do that too, as long as everybody doesn't play too loudly, which is what I always say.
I'm doing MYO at the moment. I've got a gorgeous little group of I think there's 60 kids, and they're between 8 and 14. And loudly is the default position. And it's pretty funny. It's pretty funny. And I'm only sort of babysitting them. I've got this just like the little season while they're conductors overseas. And I used the word drone the other day. And then I realized that this is one of the music language words that we use that in English has a whole other thing. And I said, it's the opposite of the drone you're thinking of. You're thinking of high and fast and zipping around the sky. We're the opposite. Low, slow.
Yeah.
And it's that English has different meanings. But yes, we were practicing against a drone to some extent, but it's really tricky when the ensemble is unbalanced just by the nature of how they play. We've got to unravel some playing there. And
Sometimes if I've got a louder section, I get them to start on the third or the dominant
Oh, and jump up, yeah.
and play, yeah, so that then you start building up a chord during the scale.
Yeah, I might have to do some more tricks with them, I think. I've only had 2 rehearsals with them. We're still in the getting to know you phase, but we'll get there. Hey, it's been so super duper having you on tonight. Thank you so much for your time and your generosity, really, in sharing all your amazing experience and insights with us tonight.
Well, thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure. I'll just get to talk about myself. It's pretty easy.
Oh, I'm loving talking about you, and I love finding out more about you. And we've got some really fun things coming up at the end of the year. We're doing some MCO together and some MSO together as well. So
Yes.
that'll be good. But yeah, so can everyone just kind of, I don't know, write something lovely for Sophie in the string thing so that she can see that? And we've got some thank yous in there already. Yay. Incredible experience to know you, Sophie, your life, your career. For me, who was a professional cellist, coming from a very strong musical background from Europe, very refreshing to hear the values and the standards that what you believe in. Congratulations, and thank you for sharing your thoughts with us. Thank you.
Oh, thank you,
Karen.
Laura.
Thank
Well,
you,
thank you, Nina, Adele, everybody, and Karen. Thanks for having me.
So good. And we're going to chat later in the week, but everybody else have a wonderful rest of week. And thank you again, Sophie. It's just such a pleasure to spend some time with you.
Thank you.
No worries. Have a good night, everybody. Thanks
Bye,
very
everyone.
much. Bye.